going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. And FPL still hasn't quite launched. I feel like I've been saying that for weeks at this point, but we are still waiting for the game to launch so we can get back into it, figure out exactly what's happening and start making videos on that. So there's no stream tonight because of that, but going forward from next week onwards, as long as the game is out, the streams will be back to the normal 9 PM slot on Sunday. So make sure you subscribe and check them out when they're live. So instead of doing a stream today, I thought I'd put a video out on Double Gameweek differentials. So we do know the game is going to start with a double game week: Sheffield United, Aston Villa, Man City and Arsenal. So in this video I'm going to talk about some differentials to consider. Let's get on with it. So first up we start with Raheem Sterling. He started off this season with an absolute bang, scoring a hat-trick in game week 1. But he's kind of tailed off since then, and for a player that scored more than 200 points a season for the last 2 seasons, he's kind of been at this stage a little bit forgotten about. Of course, the likes of De Bruyne have helped that matter. He started off a lot cheaper, and he's done really well this season. So we haven't really needed Sterling. Let's not forget, De Bruyne started at 9.5 million. Sterling was starting at 12 million. So he's actually come down a little bit to 11.7 million. Now, 15.5% ownership is by far the highest owned player on this list. And I appreciate usually when people talk about differentials, it's less than 10% or less than 5%. But the reason I put him on is because, one, that 15.5% ownership is likely in part to players that had him at the start of the season and stopped using their team. So in terms of active managers, I would imagine his ownership is actually a little bit low. Like if you look at a lot of people's FPL teams that ended the season, they wouldn't have had Sterling in them. Like a lot of them wouldn't have had Sterling in them. There's obviously still some, but not a huge amount. So I feel like that 15.5% isn't quite accurate. And when you compare him to the likes of Kevin De Bruyne, who's on 45%, he is definitely a differential in that Man City team. So far this season, he scored 11 goals, got 2 assists, which isn't great. Obviously, the hat-trick on the opening day does show, he's shown what he can do plenty of times. So there's nothing to say he can't do that for the remainder of the season. For those that like looking at stats, I looked at a few. So he is second for expected goal involvement. So that's expected goals and expected assists together. He's second out of all attackers for the whole season, which shows that he has been creating quality chances and he has been getting into the right positions to score. Just hasn't really come off for him like it has for the likes of Mane and Salah as well. So Salah is number 1 at 19.49 and Sterling just behind in second place, 18.86. There's hardly anything in it. And obviously things with XG and XA, expected goals, expected assists, sometimes it can take a while to even out and stuff. But ultimately he's done, from a stats point of view, he's done well. He's got into the right position, just hasn't quite transferred into FPL points. So expected goals is 13, he scored 11, so he's just under that. And expected assists is about 5, and he's only got 2 assists so far, so he's underperforming a little bit there. So he's definitely getting into the right positions, like I said, and creating the right chances. Just not quite gone for him so far. So it's tough to put him in our teams ahead of the likes of Mane and Salah because they've done so well. They're very similar prices. But how much will Liverpool absolutely go for it after the title is won, which is only going to be 1 or 2 games and it's absolutely won? I don't know. But for a double game week, I definitely like Sterling as a differential option. I think it feels like one of those players that won't need too much to get back up to match fitness, naturally fit. And Sané being back could help him as well. We've seen those two link up from opposite flanks before. Sterling passing the ball to Sané to score, Sané passing it to Sterling to score. So that could be a good thing that Sané is back. On the flip side, Man City, as we know, have a lot of squad depth, and they've now got Sterling, Sané, Bernardo Silva and Mahrez fit who can play on those kind of wide positions. So there's a lot of competition for places. The only thing that makes me kind of happy about Sterling is usually when everyone's fit, he would probably be considered one of the first names on the team sheet generally. Like if Pep had to choose his first 11, I think Sterling would be in that. And with the 5 subs rule, it is going to allow him maybe to use his other players like Mahrez and Bernardo Silva more. So maybe Sterling will get a few more starts, but then manage minutes. It's hard to tell. So I would never like to say that a player is nailed on. I certainly wouldn't say that about Sterling under Pep. But I think at 15.5%, much lower owned than De Bruyne, especially if you're only going to hold him for the double gaming. Arsenal at home, Burnley at home is pretty decent. We've seen what Sterling can do on his day. Very explosive. I think he's a decent differential to consider. Next up, we've got John Egan, Sheffield United, £4.6 million defender, looking very happy in his picture on screen. And given the fixtures for Sheffield United, I would imagine a lot of FPL managers are going to be doubling up, maybe even tripling up on Sheffield United defence. I think they've been so good this season. The fixtures are really good as well, albeit away games. Probably going to talk about this a lot before the season starts and we actually see how the home and away thing kind of translates into performances. But yes, they're away games, but yes, they're against good teams as well. And the away thing might not matter. Now, I already own Egan for a number of reasons. So Obviously, the other choices in the Sheffield United defence are Lundstrom, who I've already talked about, I think is a little bit of a risk because we don't know if he's definitely going to start. Don't get me wrong, if he is, then he's easily the best Sheffield United defender to pick because he's going to probably be playing in midfield again, as he has done throughout his career, and he should never have been listed as a defender, as we know. And we've got Stevens as well, and he's great because not only does he take shots, but he also creates chances as well. So he's a bit more of an all-rounder, but he is a bit more expensive as well, 5.2 million. But, and there's lots of buts in this, he is only 2.8% owned as well. So if you've got the money, I do like Stevens as well. The reason I put Egan on this list is because he's a bit cheaper, and I'll come on to more reasons for that in a minute. And one of them is that you can potentially hold him after the double game week. I feel like 5.2 million is quite a lot. I know Sheffield United have done well this year, but 5.2 million is quite a lot. Their fixtures after the double are not ideal for the rest of the season. They're okay, but they're not really that good. And if you think they're going to keep up the defensive performances they have so far, then absolutely they're worthwhile because we know how many clean sheets they've kept, so they're really good value for money. If you don't, you probably don't want to be lumbered with too many. Like 5.2 million is kind of the price where I'd want to play that player every single week or most weeks. Whereas Egan at 4.6 million, I feel like he's a little bit easier to bench because you can put that money saved, the 0.6 million, elsewhere into your team, which is why I like him. But like I said, Stevens is a bit of an all-rounder, chance created and shots, and is a differential as well. The good thing about Egan, outside of John Lundstrom, in terms of shots, he has taken the most out of all defenders. Now, as you can see on screen, that hasn't translated into any goals yet, and a lot of them have been off target, which is frustrating, but he's at least getting the chances, which is why I like him. Even in like recent games, if you check the last 6 matches, he's top for total shots as well. So, like I said, Stevens is a bit of an all-rounder, but hopefully at some point Egan can get that goal. And if it comes in the double game week, obviously that would be really good. And there could even be 1 or 2 clean sheets as well. So Sheffield United definitely worth looking at. I've talked about Stevens a lot. I think he is good if you can afford it. Otherwise, I like Egan at 4.6 million. It's just whether or not... I think the best thing to do is when the full fixture list comes out is look at that and decide whether you want to hold that Sheffield United defender long term or have to play them more often than not. And at 5.2 million, I think you might want to do that with Stevens. But 4.6 million, I like Egan. And also, if Sheffield United come back and they're not as good defensively as they have been, like I keep saying, you can easily bench him or maybe move him on for another cheap defender that's doing well. We've got the likes of Holgate, Taylor at Burnley as well. Very cheap options that you could move to. So Egan's the one I've got. If I had the money, I'd probably move to Stevens, but I think for a differential, he's well worth considering given how good Sheffield United have been. So though I've picked 6 players for this list, I've at least picked 1 player from each team. And John McGinn is my option for Aston Villa. Now, we're going to have to see if he's fully fit to play again, but it looks like he is. They've been playing kind of some games behind closed doors, and he has played already. I think it was only for about 30 minutes, but he is back playing, which is good. Obviously, he did have a long-term injury. 5.4 million midfielder, 2.6% ownership. Grealish is obviously the pick that everyone's going to go for from Aston Villa in midfield, but he's not much of a differential. He's about 20% owned, so wasn't enough to make this list, especially when you can get McGinn for 2.6. In terms of fixtures, again, they're both at home, which is good, but they're not the greatest fixtures. Again, especially going on from what I've just said about Sheffield United, if you think they're going to be good defensively, that's a tough fixture. And Chelsea will be tough as well. So it's not the ideal situation, but obviously we are talking differentials here. And, you know, will they be tough fixtures? I don't know. But after that, Aston Villa's fixtures for the remainder of the season are quite difficult. So if you're on like a free hit or something, or again, you want to hold this player long term, then 5.4 million is not too bad a price to do that. But the fixtures aren't ideal. So if he's like your 4th midfielder, I'm not sure after the double how much you'd actually want to play him. But if you do want someone from Villa and you don't want to go for the obvious Jack Grealish, he is someone I would look at. Now, he has performed okay for his price tag. He's played 17 games this year, or started 17 games, 3 goals, 2 assists. So it's nearly 1 every 3, or nearly an attacking return 1 every 3 games. And I actually compared him game week 1 to 17 versus Grealish, and he comes out quite well. So chances created, Grealish is ahead 37 to 27. You'd probably expect that because Grealish is right up there for the whole season. In terms of shots, it's 32 for Grealish. McGinn's actually had 38, although Grealish has had more in the box, 20 to 16. So McGinn is shooting a lot, but a lot of them are long range. Obviously, if one goes in, then that's ideal for the double game week. So I think if you're looking for a player specifically for the double, I think the fixtures are okay for Aston Villa. I think the one thing about McGinn I will say is I don't think he's necessarily the key to Aston Villa staying up, but he's going to be a big reason why they might do that now. I think they have missed him this year. Obviously, Grealish has been really good, but he can't do it on his own. And in those first 17 fixtures, McGinn did play really well. So I think he's definitely an option, differential for sure. Whether I'd want to hold him long term, I'm not sure, but at least for the double game week, he's worth considering. So I had to pick an Arsenal player as well, and I've actually gone for a goalkeeper. So there is a goalkeeper on this list, and it is Leno. Now, Arsenal might have some other options, that differentials, Tierney, potentially Maitland-Niles as well. They are playing matches kind of pre-season, so it would be good to see kind of how many players get minutes there, but I think it's going to be very hard to determine the first 11s because they're not going to get too many matches because obviously there's not very much time before the league starts. But Leno as a goalkeeper option for the double game week I think is probably one of the best options. Henderson, of course, is a really good option as well, and Ederson too. There's a reason I've not picked Ederson, which I'll talk about in a minute. I think in terms of the teams that have got a double, I won't be going anywhere near Villa defence. I just don't think it's been good enough. For Ederson, I've got someone else in mind from City, which we'll talk about in a minute. And Henderson at Sheffield United is 16.3% owned, so not really good enough for a differential. And I think in terms of active manager teams, he's probably quite a bit higher. And I think if you were picking a goalkeeper specifically for the double game week, let's say there was a free hit on the cards or something like that, then Henderson with the fixtures is definitely better. But holding longer term, I actually prefer Arsenal's fixtures. And one of the reasons why I prefer maybe going Leno is because Sheffield United have got loads of defenders you can choose from. Whereas Arsenal, like I've just mentioned, players like Tierney, yes, they could be good, but we've really not seen anything from him. We don't know if he's definitely going to start. He's very injury prone, or at least has been holding a long-term injury for Arsenal. Whereas Sheffield United have got a lot of defenders to choose from that you could pair with Leno. You wouldn't necessarily want to do that the other way around. Plus, after the double game week, there's obviously 8 game weeks going to be remaining, and Henderson can only play in 7 of them because he's playing Man United, and obviously that's the parent club, so he can't play there. So I think Henderson's a good option, and if you've got a second keeper, maybe that's okay, but I think otherwise Leno is the one I would want to look at. Now, Arsenal defence had looked like it was starting to improve under Arteta. Obviously, the problem is that they've had, like a lot of teams, they've now got a long break where they've not been able to work on that. Yes, they're back in training. Yes, he'll be pushing his methods and his tactics and his strategies even further. But you really need games to make that properly work. So I do think we'll continue to see a defensive kind of performance increase from Arsenal. Whether it'll be enough to make them defensive options for the rest of the season will be hard to tell, or we'll have to wait and see. Next season, I think it might be even better. But for 9 game weeks to go, I think Leno could be a good shout. 5 million, like I said, 5.6% owned. He's also made the most saves this year, 108. Sorry, the second most saves, 108. Now, you can see that as a good or a bad thing. One, he is there making saves, which is good. He's stopping goals. He's getting points potentially for his save, the amount of saves he's making as well. But obviously, at the same time, Arsenal are conceding a lot of shots, which isn't good. But like I said, under Arteta, they had shown a bit of defensive improvement. So hopefully that will continue. I think for 5 million, he's a bit cheaper than Henderson. The fixtures for the remainder are good. Yes, he plays Man City, which is going to be tough, but got potential for saves there, and then maybe a clean sheet against Brighton as well. So my defensive goal, or my goalkeeper option for a double game week differential is Leno from Arsenal. So I think Man City are just too good not to choose another differential from them for this video. I've gone with Laporte in defence. This is why I've not gone for Ederson, basically. I do like Ederson. He's pretty much the only player in the team you could say is completely nailed. But I think De Bruyne and Laporte come close to that as well. And obviously you do get a bit more of Laporte, attacking threat potentially as well. Whereas Ederson's not going to get you too many saves because Man City just don't concede enough shots. And he's not really going to get bonus. So you're really just getting that clean sheet points. Whereas with Laporte, you got chance of bonus attack and returns as well, which could help. Now, Man City have only kept 10 clean sheets this season. You would have thought, to be fair, they maybe drew a few more. They should have got a few more so far this season. Hopefully that will happen from an FPL point of view for the remainder of the season. And Laporte missing, to be fair, has been a big reason why they've not got those clean sheets yet. And how many they'll get when he's back is no one really knows. But in the 5 games he's played where he's actually played enough minutes to get a clean sheet, because he really has played a really limited amount of football this year, he's got clean sheets in 3 of them, which is a 60% return rate, which is decent. Now, I'm not saying he'll get that over a larger sample size, but there is only 9 game weeks remaining. Could he get 3 or 4 clean sheets in those times? Potentially. Fixtures in the double are really good as well. I think Arsenal, under Arteta, yes, they've improved defensively. They're not taking a huge amount of shots, which doesn't necessarily matter because they have still scored quite a few goals. And obviously, players like Aubameyang don't need too many chances to score. But I think at home, it's a decent fixture, and so is McBurnie at home as well. The thing about Man City, which I'm going to find interesting, playing behind closed doors, I feel like, I'm not saying the matches will feel like a training game. I just feel like even without a crowd, Man City will just absolutely dominate those games, even against Arsenal. Just in the way they play. The way they play is almost like they're playing in training anyway, so I think it could suit them. It'd be interesting to see how it works out. So the Arsenal game, obviously they could concede, but I think there's potential for a clean sheet there, and definitely against Burnley as well. If you can get attacking returns, that's decent too. Now, at 6.3 million, it is quite expensive, especially if you're looking to put in the likes of maybe Doherty as a single game week player, because Wolves fixtures are really good. If you want to carry on going with Trent Alexander-Arnold, Robertson, Van Dijk, it's hard to fit him in, but Man City's fixtures are really good after the double as well. And I'd be tempted to just put him in as a massive differential. 2% ownership, which probably will go up once FPL reopens, but I'm not sure it'll go up to a huge amount because people will find it hard to fit him in, basically. So I think you get attacking potential for clean sheets, very low-owned player for one of the best sides in the league. And outside of Sheffield United defenders, I don't really know who else you'd be looking at right now when it comes to options for the double game week. The last on the list is Oliver McBurnie. I don't think many people would have expected to see him here. And as good as Sheffield United defenders have been this year, we haven't really given attackers much thought, to be honest, just because they haven't been that great. Mousse had a brief spell of doing well. Fleck has been a very cheap, potentially enabler as well. But ultimately, Sheffield United attackers is not where we've been. But he is the least owned player on this list, 0.2% ownership. So it doesn't get much more different. If you want someone cheap for the double game week, I think Aston Villa are a team that have conceded a lot of goals so far this season. And I don't really see any reason why that would stop. So that's a really good fixture. Newcastle maybe a little bit more difficult, but it is pretty decent. So in terms of nailed on forwards, Sheffield United have used quite a few this year. But he did start the last 7 games of the season, so it feels like that is his spot. Obviously, they play with 2 up front, so it's him plus 1 maybe. But he should have a role up front for the remainder of the games, unless something major has changed at Sheffield United, but I would expect that not to be the case. But he's played 7 games, only got 1 goal. I know a few people are looking at Samatta as well from Villa. I'm not too sure about him, to be honest. Just like I'm not 100% confident with McBurnie, but in terms of talking about differentials as a cheap forward, he is definitely one that should be considered. So looking at those last 7 game weeks that he played, he was 5th for shots in the box out of all forwards and 7th for big chances. And the total number of big chances he had was only 2 behind Aguero as well. So he did get the chances. He didn't just necessarily put them away. And I'm not saying that he's as good as Aguero. Of course he's not, but he is much, much cheaper. And if he is getting those chances, all he needs to do is put a couple of them away over the double game week, and suddenly he's been a really good option for you at 0.2% ownership. Now, in terms of being a quality finisher, I'm not saying he is that. Maybe Samatta is slightly better, but I do prefer Sheffield United's fixtures than Aston Villa's. One thing to say, I guess, is Aston Villa have obviously got a lot to play for. Sheffield United, not so much, although they can still get into Europe, so that's definitely going to be on their mind. That'll be a huge thing for them. Whether or not the squad will be able to cope with that next year will be something to have to wait and see. But in terms of getting into Europe, that would be huge. To come into the Premier League and do that your first season, or with the first season back, would be absolutely brilliant for Sheffield United. So we'll see if that's something they do. But in terms of options, I do think attack-wise, I'm not saying you'd have to be desperate to go for Sheffield United, because like I said, that Aston Villa fixture is really good. But I think you have to kind of temper your expectations. If you're getting someone like McBurnie, and yes, he's a huge differential, yes, he's getting the chances, and if he puts a couple of them away, you're absolutely laughing. But he isn't the kind of quality finisher that maybe we've seen from other players in the league. So in terms of getting those goals, it's going to be tough. But he's got the fixtures for it. He is getting the chances. As long as that continues when the season restarts, then he could be a good option maybe. But 2.2 points per match is less than ideal. Only 4 goals so far this season. Like I said, only 1 in those last 7 game weeks. But as a differential, could he be an option? Let me know in the comments below. So that is it for this video. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have, make sure to give it a like. Like I said, once the game relaunches, there'll be plenty more videos, whether we get free hit, unlimited transfers, whatever it might be. I'll be creating videos on that, looking at the fixtures, getting back to streaming as well. Like I said, from next Sunday, hopefully at 9 o'clock, we'll be back every single week. And then probably on Thursdays too, depending on when the game weeks kind of fall, because we are going to get some short turnarounds, which will change the schedule. But either way, there's lots of content to come. Let me know what you think about the options I've talked about in this video. Are any of them worth considering? The other differentials that you're looking at for the double game week? Give the video a like if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new around here. And I'll be back shortly with another video, I'm sure. Just come on FPL, get launched, and we can get creating even more content.